good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Thoughtful Thursday as we continue our journey in a contemplative way on the 5 Principles for Spiritual Living, a booklet by Unity. I think it's a great way to not only learn the 5 principles we use here at Unity, or that were taught to me by Unity, but at the same note, some time in contemplation with the music and actually thinking about each principle. Last week we did principle number 1, which of course was God is absolute good everywhere and present. This week we'll be working with principle number 2. Human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within. Their very essence is of God and therefore are also inherently good. And it's one of those things that really needs to hit home with us, because a lot of times we like to put ourselves down and doubt ourselves. But we want to take into consideration as we move through the principles, if we've said that God is absolute good and we are one of the greatest expressions of God, then why are we not inherently good? So as we begin, let us start with, again, the reading of the principle, which is human beings have a spark of divinity within themselves, the Christ spirit within. Their very essence is of God, and therefore they are also inherently good. So our first story is by Reverend Beatrice, and the title is The Presence of God in Me. Years ago, when I first read about the 5 universal principles taught in Unity, something that amazed me powerfully was that while they were very simple at first reading, they had layers of depth. I was so impressed by each of them that I decided to put them into practice. One of the greatest challenges was understanding and accepting that there was a divine spark in me, the spark of the indwelling Christ. That truth was very moving for me, and at the same time filled me with doubts and questions. Could this be true? Could I really be a magnificent being of light? Did my spiritual identity as proclaimed actually exist? And as if this weren't enough, the second principle also stated that all human beings possesses the same inner divinity. So this included all humanity. We are all divine beings. I had to check it out, and fundamentally I wanted to start feeling it, so I decided to affirm every morning on awakening, the divinity dwells in me. And every time I came across another person, I would try to affirm the divinity dwells in you. At that time, I lived in the heart of a very populous city, so it was inevitable that I would cross paths with countless people every day. In addition, my profession kept me in contact with many individuals, so I had numerous opportunities to practice this exercise. Although at first it cost me a bit, as the days went by, it became easier for me, to the point where I affirmed the divinity dwells in you, and I also tried to visualize points of light in their hearts. Thus I came to understand the divinity that potentially was in me, and in everyone had to be brought to the surface. I also understand that the light I had to shine was my own light, because as the statement and command of Jesus says, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others. And that, of course, is from Matthew 5:14 and 16. Many years have passed since I started the practice of affirming the divinity in each person. It has not always been easy, but looking back, I can see that my heart has become more compassionate. I have become more underlying and tolerant of myself and others, and my life now unfolds in peace and harmony. We are all in the same process of fulfilling the divine mandate to allow our light to shine. We may or may not be aware of this, but our soul knows that is our true purpose. Every day I pray and focus on the infinite divinity on the Christ of my being, and I can feel that presence. There is no doubt or fear in the divine presence. There is only one love, and that love fills me with peace. And we affirm after this story, the presence of God is my permanent abode. Once again, we affirm the presence of God is my permanent abode. And let us allow that to just sink in for a moment. Let's go ahead and enter into our affirmative prayer here. The blazing light of the Christ is the presence that inspires, sustains, and guides me. The pure indwelling spirit heals me, strengthens me, and makes me prosper. Everything is in perfect divine order here and now. I am blessed in all areas of life, and nothing or no one can alter the peace that resides in my heart. Rooted in God, I think and feel and act according to the dictates of pure divine love. I am thankful for this and the awareness of the presence of God in me. And as we move on to our next story by Reverend Paul John Roach, human beings are divine. And I experience relatively benign upbringing in terms of my church and religious traditions. However, the prevailing perception of God was of a super being who was somehow above and beyond his creation. This was definitely a gap between God and humanity, and this was reinforced by the notion of humanity's sinful nature. This never rang true for me, and as a result, I found a closer connection to the divine in nature that is in traditional religion. It was not until my 20s when I began to explore unity and other mystical and metaphysical traditions that my concept of God began to shift. I heard terms like presence and power to describe this deity. This presence and power pervaded the universe, connecting everything, including me, as well as the rest of humanity and all living things. This was revelatory. I remember God being described as energy, and this truly excited me. The Creator was no longer a super being distant from me, but the energy that coursed through my body and mind. The word energy also helped me reconcile the scientific with the spiritual. God was not a being, but beingness itself, moving in and through the ordered harmony of mathematics as well as the inspirational words of poetry and song. The concept that there is one presence and one power in the universe dispelled from my mind any lingering feelings of separation and sin. It was made perfect sense for me because if God is all-powerful, everywhere present, and all-wise, then the beingness pervaded the universe. There could be no other power. This aligned with my understanding of wholeness and interconnectedness of the natural world. What's more, it naturally followed that if there is only one true presence in the universe, then I am part and parcel of the energy and power too. The ancient principle that was very essence of humanity is of God, and that we have a spark of divinity within us is perhaps the most radical revisioning I have experienced on my spiritual journey. It was and continues to be true breakthrough, in short, human being and divine. We, you and I, are not created beings separated from God by our sinful nature, but inherently we are whole and holy, worthy children of the divine. Another shift I incorporated into my worldview was that this recognition of divinity is not just for me, but for everyone, including all sentient beings. I began to see the Spirit in others, the same love that my essential nature is yours too. From this compassion and generosity arise, the world is no longer a collection of disparate and often confusing parts, but a seamless whole. There are no boundaries in truth. Every person is my brother and my sister. This magnanimous awareness is expansive and practical. Working for the greater good is not just about changing outer intuitions and power structures, but harnessing the world's changing power of our minds. Real inner and outer change begins with me and with every other willing person. We have the power to create a happy and more contented life and the ability to help others through our spiritual awareness. So with that story, let us go ahead and affirm, I am the divine energy of God in expression now and always. Let that just permeate for a minute. I am the divine energy of God in expression now and always. And let's affirmatively pray. The one presence of God is moving in and through you right now. It provides you with all energy, wisdom, and love you will ever need. Acknowledge who you are. In reality, you are love, you are whole, you are divine. As we accept these truths, we become capable and remarkable spiritual beings in human form, bringing light and love into our life experience. The inexhaustible energy and power of the divine moves in and through me this day to bless and heal and bring joy and peace to all, including myself. I live magnificently in the flow of God's everywhere present good. And our last story on this principle is God is in All Beings by Reverend Carolyn. She writes, I experience a sense of wonder and joy each time that I remember that I am an eternal expression of God and that God lives within me every moment. I feel gratitude for having been born into this human existence and the opportunity to demonstrate God with each breath I take. But sometimes I forget. Perhaps you too have lived through the events where you are challenged in remembering that we are open to our divine nature. God is present in each aspect of our lives. In 2018, my home burned down in the Northern California car fire. My husband and I escaped through the flames with only the clothes on our back. Neighbors helped each other flee, and one neighbor drove us to safety in his SUV. In my fear, I constantly repeated the mantra, God is, even in this. It helped me ground me in a sense of sanity when what was happening around me was incomprehensible. I continue to use my mantra over the next days and weeks. I believe that God would bring perfect outcome for me in our community. Yet often, it was only an intellectual belief that didn't reach my heart. I was afraid and challenged in my feeling, my divinity, and in remembering how divine works in life. The weekend following the fire, I visited my daughter and her family. They had a menagerie of animals, including 2 large dogs, and I have a fear of big dogs, especially ones that jump. Pinecone, their hefty white rescue lab, Shar-Pei mix, particularly intimidated me. This dog, however, helped me begin to recover from the losses I felt. From the moment I entered my daughter's home, Pinecone became my rescuer. He gently walked up to me, looked at me with a knowing, compassionate, and loving gaze, and didn't leave my side during my weekend stay. He rested against my leg. If I wept, he would put his head on my lap and made soft, throaty, soothing sounds. I felt comforted. There was something in the dog that responded to my pain and deep understanding. I felt as if Pinecone recognized my divinity and was reminding me of who I am, regardless of the conditions. He knew that I am love, and he responded with love. I no longer fear Pinecone. During a challenging time, we developed a relationship that continues to this day. When I visit my daughter's family, Pinecone sits by my side or follows me through the house. He reminds me not only that all human beings and I are expressions of the divine, but that all sentinel beings are. He reminds me that whatever is happening in the outer world, God provides emissaries to show us we are loved unconditionally, and we are expressions of that love, whether we feel it in the moment or not. When I feel disconnected from my divinity, I think about Pinecone and brought back into my wholeness, knowing that God and I are one, and that God is, regardless of outer conditions. I remember that God always sends messengers to assist us. And there are times we need others to reflect to us that we are unable to see in ourselves. We only need to open our hearts to receive. And we affirm together, I express God with each thought, I think each word, I speak, and each action I take. God and I are one. So let's breathe into that again. I express God with each thought, I think, each word I speak, and each action I take. God and I are one. Let's sit with that for one quick moment. Now let's affirmatively pray. In this moment, I breathe the breath of God. I remember my divinity and honor the divinity in all humankind. I express God in my unique way, trusting my inner guidance. With a grateful heart, I nurture my divine self as I grow even more greatly in my Christ spirit. And so it is. Amen. And as always, this is meant for us to just sit back, enjoy the music, listen to the story, let the affirmations sink in. If the affirmation is challenging, it gives us a chance to see the work we need to do. But if not, we enjoy the prayer and we just sit back and listen. So, as always, next week we'll start with principle number 3. I will review the first 2 principles there as well. So grab yourself a pair of headphones, or if you're at home, quiet, and just close your eyes and just listen and let it move through you. And that's what Thoughtful Thursdays is about. So if you haven't had a chance to do it, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, like this video, share the video, and as well, make sure that bell or the notification is turned on so you know anytime we drop a new video. So with that being said, as always, I love you, nothing you can do about it, and I truly know that the divinity in me sees that holy divinity in you as you are whole and perfect in every way. And I will see you on the next episode.